Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 7 historic fire tornadoes or Firenadoes from Swiggle Studios. This channel, he's an expert in tornadoes and these types of things. Firenadoes, I mean, they're definitely a much more rare occurrence. I feel like they're only really a thing when there's like wildfires and stuff happening, which then will obviously, I guess if there's wildfires and then there's tornadoes going through the region at that time, then that's just what causes it. But I don't really actually know like the science behind them. It's been mentioned in videos before, but I may be a bit off with what I've said there. But I assume yes, during like wildfires and then the conditions are just perfect for the tornadoes to come through anyway, or I don't know, maybe it's just something completely unrelated. But we're going to check this out, hopefully going to enjoy. Thanks for the support on the Patreon as always. Of course, I mean, I'm posting on the Patreon right now because my YouTube I can't post on. I think that stops tomorrow, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, the Patreon is where we've been posting because I want to continue doing these reactions. But yeah, thanks for the support on here as always. And let's check this video out.
Today we're going over a rare natural phenomenon that sounds like it could only exist in a nightmare. Tornadoes by themselves are pretty scary. Fires by themselves are pretty scary. But a fire tornado? Pure nightmare fuel. And unfortunately, they do occur. Around noon on September 1st, 1923, Tokyo, Japan experienced one of its strongest earthquakes on record, known as the Great Kanto Earthquake. An earthquake that measured 8 on the Richter scale rocked Sagami Bay and the surrounding cities of Tokyo and Yokohama. While the earthquake itself was bad enough, unfortunately, it occurred while people were cooking their midday meals. For this reason, mass fires broke out everywhere. These fires also occurred during high winds caused by a typhoon right off the coast. So all these elements together led to a massive fire that created a huge rotating pyrocumulonimbus cloud, essentially a pyro-supercell thunderstorm. Supercells are the same thunderstorms that are responsible for tornadoes. And on that day, above the large fires of downtown Tokyo, a large fire tornado formed. But it wasn't like a little fire dust devil thing. No. This was a full-fledged tornado, probably at least an EF3. This firenado struck a clothing store in downtown Tokyo and claimed all 38,000 lives inside. The deadliest tornado on record in the United States ever was the tri-state tornado in 1925, with close to 700 deaths. The fire tornado over Tokyo on September 1st claimed 38,000 lives.
Wait, 38,000?
Now, it's not 100% verified that this was a true fire tornado, which is why it doesn't have the official record as deadliest tornado ever. But if it was a true tornado, this would be the deadliest on record. It's extremely tragic and it's honestly hard to even comprehend. Due to this event, September 1st in Japan is known as Disaster Prevention Day. This day serves as a memorial to those who perished during the 1923 earthquake, tsunami, and fire tornado, as well as a day to just...
Man, imagine facing all of that within, I guess, the space of a few hours. You could not have it worse, honestly. They're like the 3 worst possible weather or natural disaster sort of things. Like, I'm saying weather conditions, but earthquakes aren't really involved in weather, or they're not. That's just a natural disaster. Tsunamis, I mean... all of these ones alone are scary as it is. Combined, flipping hell.
Just learn about natural disasters and how to best prepare for them. The firenado is a natural phenomenon that is so rare that we only have a handful of documented cases. But we do have cases. In fact, we even have a few examples from only a few years ago. So today, we're talking about them. We'll be discussing the most infamous firenadoes in recorded history. We'll talk about how large they were, how they formed, and the scenarios that might cause them to form in the future. Let's get into it.
Here we go. I'm fascinated, man. This is going to be interesting. It's very unique.
Let's actually start off with the different types of firenadoes. Starting off with the most common form, what I call a fire tornado level 1, the fire whirl, sometimes referred to as fire devils. These are relatively small, pretty common, and form in the same way as dust devils through a process known as convection, which is rising hot air. Fire is hot, just FYI, and hot air rises. So the air above the fire creates an updraft, and sometimes a little swirl, a little eddy of hot air forms and pulls flame, smoke, and ash up into it. These flame eddies can be close to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit and are 10 to 15 meters high. Usually they only last for about a minute. I see these pop up from time to time on YouTube shorts, and they tend to be what most people think of when they think of a fire tornado. But we're moving on to fire tornado type 2 / level 2, the pyronado. These are kind of the more extreme version of the fire whirl. These are a little bit larger and they're more violent. They tend to be about 10 to 50 meters wide and hundreds of meters tall, and sometimes they even reach underneath a pyrocumulus cloud. A pyrocumulus cloud is a cumulus cloud that is formed from a large fire, whether that's a volcano, a forest fire, whatever. They often occur over water, but Firenadoes tend to last 5 to 10 minutes and are mostly filled with smoke and ash and bands of fire. The wind speeds of these level 2 Firenadoes are close to 70 miles per hour. So let's talk firestorms. Firestorms are thunderstorms that form over large fires. Full disclosure, experts still are not 100% sure on the mechanisms behind their creation. They just know that the insane amount of heat caused by large fires can generate their own weather systems.
What?
Most firestorms are from pyrocumulus clouds, which we just talked about. But on rare occasions, if a specific fire is very intense and if the atmosphere is unstable, a pyrocumulonimbus cloud can form. These are like next level pyrocumulus clouds. They are much larger, and their associated thunderstorms can be
Bro, it looks like an atomic bomb. Like it's like a mushroom cloud.
much more violent. We're talking lightning, black hail, and even tornadoes. Which brings us to level 3, true fire tornadoes. Pyrotornadogenesis is a relatively new field in meteorology, and a lot of experts disagree on the different aspects of it. But under super rare and extreme conditions, large tornadoes have formed beneath pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Not like the tiny fire whirls that we spoke about earlier, the little fire devils. No, not that. I'm talking like full-fledged tornadoes, similar to those produced by supercells in Tornado Alley. It's theorized that a rising rotating updraft caused by the intense heat of the forest fire can rotate up into the pyrocumulonimbus cloud, and in turn create a mesocyclonic pyro supercell that spawns large tornadoes over or near the wildfire. We've even seen rotation on velocity scans of pyrocumulonimbus clouds. These nightmarish tornadoes can be over a mile wide with wind speeds in the EF2 to EF3 range, or about 100 to 165 miles per hour. Not only is there a fire blazing all around, but winds are also lofting roofs and cars and all sorts of things all throughout the air. Trees are flying all around. It's crazy. It's like a, end time scenario. The first recorded instance in what is believed to be a true fire tornado occurred during the 1871 Peshtigo fire. The Peshtigo fire was a huge, large-scale forest fire that burned 1.2 million acres of northeastern Wisconsin on October 8, 1871. It's estimated that close to 2,000 people perished in the disaster, and some have claimed that it could have been caused by a comet. Probably not. That's a story for another time. But I went down a rabbit hole while doing research on that topic. Anyway, but during the Peshtigo fire, the townsfolk of Peshtigo claimed to see several large fire tornadoes that destroyed numerous buildings and lofted rail cars high up into the sky. Some survivors jumped into a river to escape the fire, and when they came up for air, they were like in the eye of a fire tornado. They said there was like no smoke because the smoke had been lofted high up into the sky, so it was just a blazing inferno all around them, which is insane and terrifying, and wow. Some of them did perish, but
the thing is, with these stories, they're so like out there, and they're from so long ago. I don't think you can really dispute that they're not true, because why would someone just make this up? Especially in these times when I guess these sorts of stories, I just feel like, because obviously there's no like proof of it, I guess footage or anything, but word of mouth, whatever, it's been passed through so many years. I just can't really think it wouldn't be true. And the fact that like having to get up from water and seeing all this stuff and then probably having to go back down because the fumes or the heat getting to you, whatever it is, like that is wild, man. Like, imagine seeing footage of that in this current day. That's unimaginable.
But some did survive to tell the tale, which is insane. The next recorded firenado after the Peshtigo fire occurred during the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, which we discussed in the intro. But another interesting case of pyrotornadogenesis came only a few years later from the San Luis Obispo fire of April 7th, 1926. This case is interesting because it's a really solid example of a tornado being spawned by a firestorm outside of the burning area, like normal tornadoes. The fire was initially caused by a bolt of lightning that struck an oil reserve, causing a huge explosion. The fire was intense and created its own weather system, aka its own pyrocumulonimbus cloud, and reportedly it produced over 100 small to medium-sized tornadoes. While there were several normal, classic tornadoes spawned outside the burning area, there were also a series of true large-scale firenadoes that formed right over the fire itself. When the fire reached a new reservoir, the whole thing instantly went up in flames. Eyewitnesses claimed that the flames went thousands of feet into the air and it was just a bright flash. And then right after that huge explosion of fire, a tornado would form. This video still right here claims that there was a tempest of destruction. Tempest, back in the day, was a fancy word for tornado. The fire tornado would then often move away from the fire and into populated areas. In fact, one of the fire tornadoes hit a trailer, killing 2 people inside. There were others who were thrown by this tornado but survived.
Wow.
This cycle repeated several times. Every time a new oil reservoir went up in flames, a new fire tornado would form. It was as if the explosion itself initiated the tornado. The furthest that any tornado traveled from the burn site was only 3 miles. It's worth noting that the atmosphere in general was pretty unstable at the time of the fire due to another storm system nearby, so that may have played a factor. And of course, we have other examples of fire tornadoes during World War II when there were huge fires throughout Europe and Japan from fire bombings. One notable fire tornado happened in Hamburg, Germany in 1943.
What?
After the Allied forces bombed Hamburg, windy conditions spawned several large fires throughout the city. In fact, the fires did more damage than the bombs themselves. These large fires then led to a firestorm where survivors claimed to witness a massive fire tornado. The Firenadoes was believed to be 1,600 feet tall with winds over 100 miles per hour. One eyewitness account of the Hamburg firebombing fire tornado said this, quote, "The firestorm was now raging through all the streets. We had only just reached the door to the air raid shelter. At this moment, something snapped in a neighbor, and caught up in the panic, he took his bed cover and wandered out of the shelter. None of us could stop him. We saw him still, but only as a living torch carried by the firestorm, flying through the air. We were all deeply shocked by this. Our situation at this point was almost hopeless." You might be wondering if a firenado was witnessed during the burning of Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atomic bombs. While a firestorm did develop in Hiroshima, there were no reports of a fire tornado. However, there was an image of the firestorm/pyrocumulonimbus cloud over Hiroshima, and it was misidentified as the atomic mushroom cloud for decades after the event. This photo was taken about 3 hours after the bombing. So let's talk about more recent firenadoes, ones that we have real data from and even footage. Back in the day, fire tornadoes were more of an urban legend. Experts did believe they existed because we had stories like Peshtigo and the Great Kanto earthquake, but these were just stories. There were no pictures and no fire tornado had ever been filmed. That is until the Great Canberra bushfires in Australia in 2003. Tom Bates was filming a large fire near Mount Arrowing on January 18th when he captured the formation of a true fire tornado for the first time in history. Here's that footage.
Imagine being this guy catching this.
And you can see, there it is. That's definitely a tornado mixed within the wildfire. This fire tornado had wind speeds measured at 160 miles per hour, giving it an EF3 classification, which means it's actually one of the strongest tornadoes, period, in Australian history, the strongest being the F4 Buka tornado in 1992. This video also records a flashover where hundreds of acres instantly burned. It's worth noting that the fire tornado formed right after the flashover event, very similar to the San Luis Obispo fire of April 7th, 1926. For a while, this was the only footage that we had of a true fire tornado. That is until July of 2018 in Redding, California during the Carr fire.
Oh my days. This is huge.
Here's footage of that fire tornado, and you can totally see rotation. That's a tornado. I actually think the best footage of the Redding, California fire tornado comes from this fire truck dash cam video. There is a bar in the...
How do you stop this fire, mate? These people deserve the most, man. How do you go into this and have, like, wildfires, man? Like, being a firefighter in these states, knowing that you're going to be facing this stuff. I assume maybe firefighters in countries or in regions where wildfires are more prone to happen. Do you get more pay than the average firefighter? Because you're pretty much doing this job knowing you're going to have to deal with situations like this.
Which makes it kind of hard to see. But that right there, holy goodness. That looks like a classic EF3 or even EF4 tornado. Cars were thrown, trees were destroyed, and we even got an actual survey from the National Weather Service of Sacramento, California. In their survey, they concluded that there was indeed a fire tornado and that the wind speeds were in the 140 to 150 mile per hour range, classifying this twister as an EF3. This is some serious natural disaster on display. I mean, this is like if you think of like what nature can cause, like hurricanes, fires, tornadoes, this right here just seems like the tip of that, unless you count like an asteroid impact. I guess that's nature as well. Recently, in 2021, there was the Bootleg Fire in Oregon that produced a small tornado with wind speeds around 111 miles per hour. Photos that were taken after the event showed downed trees and even ripped up pavement. This one was not captured on film. Obviously, if there's a huge fire, people tend to stay away, but definitely a confirmed fire tornado. Let's talk about the chances of a severe and deadly fire tornado in the future. Who's at risk? What are the atmospheric conditions that are needed to create such horrific monsters? And is there a way to warn people in the moments leading up to a fire tornado? Well, speaking of fire tornado warnings, that's actually already happened. On August 15th, 2020, there was a large wildfire near Loyalton, California. The wildfire produced a large pyrocumulonimbus cloud. And the National Weather Service thought, this might be able to spawn a tornado. So they issued the very first fire tornado warning. The very first tornado warning that was associated with a pyrocumulonimbus cloud. There were some smaller fire tornadoes reported from this event, but thankfully nothing crazy happened and the warning was able to expire shortly after it was released. Places that don't typically get traditional tornadoes are more at risk for fire tornadoes. Places like Australia, places like California, Oregon, Washington. But they can obviously occur in the east as well. I mean, obviously they've already occurred in Wisconsin. The main factors that play a role in the formation of large fire tornadoes seem to be a huge traditional fire, like a forest fire, perhaps a city is on fire. That would be bad, but there's a massive traditional fire, and this fire is occurring under an unstable atmosphere that then leads to a large pyrocumulonimbus cloud that on a rare occasion can spawn a large fire tornado. Windy conditions also seem to play a key role. And huge explosions or flashovers / brief moments of intense heat also seem to be a factor in pyrotornadogenesis. Wildfire tornadoes are still poorly understood. Unfortunately, they'll likely become more common in the decades ahead. Thanks so much for watching.
Well, there we go. It's a pretty unknown sort of phenomena, but it's real, or they're real, and there's footage of it. I had to quickly check when you said there were 38,000 people inside of a clothing store. Thought it must have been an error, but no, 38,000 people were inside that clothing store taking shelter. That's mental. That is unreal, man. But god damn, there's some horrific stuff that has happened in the history of the planet. Forget humans causing tragedies. Just nature itself can do its thing. Oh man, but yeah, that's this reaction. Let me know your thoughts on this, and until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.